Now, if you follow me on Backlogged, which if you don't, you should, link in the description, I've spent most of the month of December reviewing a lot of the games that were present in the Atari 50 collection. Yeah, it's been a very fascinating experience, I guess, going through all these old-timey video games and trying to see them from the perspective of someone at the time, you know, not giving for granted all the stuff that I see and kind of having a more historical outlook. That made it a great experience, and I think the Atari 50 collection is one of my favorite things in gaming, at least that I've played in recent times. And if you are into the history of video games and you want to try something different, just to see what it's like and maybe even learn something along the way with the documentaries and such, I highly recommend playing it, but I am not in the mood for writing anymore. I've written like a ton on that month, and right now I just want to do some semi-unscripted ramblings regarding some of the games that I've played after putting out the last review. I still found more games that I find to be worth discussing, and that's what I'm gonna do in this video. Now, one game that I am not going to be talking about today is the Sword Quest saga. All 4 games, including the one that was made specifically for this collection. That's because, you know, I am incredibly fascinated by the Sword Quest games. I've read all the comic books, I've read all the magazine stuff that is, in the collection. I've seen the interviews. I find the idea of something like that to be incredibly fascinating, but I can see why the series was never finished, why they never made that 4th game, and the 3rd one was just a mailing, something that they gave away if you were subscribed to the Atari newsletter or whatever it was. I don't remember, because these games are way too vague for their own good, I'm afraid. And by the time the 3rd one came around, I think a lot of people, they played one and they didn't understand jack of what was going on. I don't think they're gonna be willing to buy the sequel, even if you are going to get a big reward in the form of tacky jewelry if you're dedicated enough to find out all the secrets. Which, talking about that, this series came out a bit too early for its own good, because the idea of having a big tournament in some big warehouse where all the game masters would try to beat the game as fast as possible. If something like that was televised, it would have given a lot more popularity to the brand. But as is, I don't think video games in the early 80s were considered serious enough for something like that to be put on television. And of course there is no Twitch, there is no nothing like that. And it's a shame, because, as I said, I love the concept of Sword Quest. I've tried playing it. It's a bit annoying to play digitally, because you are supposed to have the instruction manual and the comic book right next to you, and of course you can't do that when the comic book and the instruction manual are both digital. So there is an element of clunkiness that makes these games less enjoyable than they were meant to be. I really wish this concept was executed a bit better, because I really love it. But yes, onto games that I actually did play on a deeper level than this. Crystal Castles. I've written a review on Backlogged for Maze Invaders, and all of the other reviews I was very confused, because they said, oh, this isn't as good as Pac-Man, Pac-Man this, Pac-Man that. And I played it and I was like, this is nothing like Pac-Man. Why is everyone comparing it to Pac-Man? I don't understand. Then later I played Crystal Castles, and this game is Pac-Man. This game is Pac-Man on ultra steroids. I mean, I liked it. It's overall a good game. I can see why it didn't turn into a big multimedia franchise like the Paxter, but it was fun for what it was. The premise is very similar. There is a bunch of gems that you have to collect in these very tight corridors, and you got the enemies, and you got the power-ups and all of that stuff. It's Simple, I think this game came out in '83. For the time, something like this would have been a bit simple, a bit basic. But, even so, the execution, I would say, is mostly pretty good for what it was. I like that you can jump on some of the enemies when they are in the middle of collecting the gems. And in fact, there is this thing where like you can finish a level and technically you are tasked with getting all of the gems. But if an enemy just hits one before you, you're still going to the next level. You're just not getting the the bonus, because for an arcade game, of course, getting the high score, that was very important. And even if you went to the next level, it would be some sort of disadvantage. That's fun. One thing that I cannot understand if it's just the emulation or this is how the controls were in the original. Moving is very slippery. In the earlier levels, this isn't a big issue. When you get to the more complex layouts and you have to move through ladders and stuff like that, it gets really annoying. I don't know if to blame the game itself or the emulation, but it's something worth noting. You will probably see me fuck up a few times because of this. Eventually you do get used to it, but again, worth noting. A small thing that isn't really important, but I really liked the pseudo 3D graphics. You can see at the beginning of each level the geometry form itself in real time. Again, for a game that is this old, this is a really cool effect, I think. Just one aspect in particular that gives it a bit of an edge, at least, compared to maybe the more innovative games that you would see around that time. Also, the protagonist of this game, Bentley Bear, appears in Atari cards, which is a rancid game, but the music is really good, so hey, at least there is that. Sorry, I forgot to mention, there is also the Atari 2600 version that I've played, and it's fine. I liked it. I guess it recreates the gameplay of the arcade well enough, but the hitbox of the gems and the enemies is incredibly finicky, except when you don't want it to be finicky, which is when you are like next to an enemy. It kinda ruins the whole experience. Other than that, I would say it's still fine for what it is. The second game I have played is Cloak and Dagger, which is based apparently out of some movie, which I haven't seen. I have no idea how faithful it is to its source material, and I was convinced that this was related to like Marvel superheroes, because I'm pretty sure there is like a superhero duo that is called Cloak and Dagger, but maybe I'm thinking of something else. Regardless, Cloak and Dagger, great game. Yeah, I really liked this one. For a game that came out in '83, pleasantly surprised by how much stuff it has going for itself. Just looking at like the basics of the gameplay, it's got stuff like destructible walls, enemies that will bounce back projectiles at you, a decent amount of enemies in general, which for a game that has a lot of levels like this one, very important and very appreciated. You've got moving platforms, you've got bombs, there is like a lot in terms of stuff that you have to interact with. The bigger hook, I guess, is you have to collect 3 parts of a map over the course of 3 levels, and after that you will have to walk through some sort of a minefield, and if you don't have the pieces of the map, you will have to kinda figure out where to go by yourself. You can still see where the bombs are when you walk close to them, but if you're trying to go fast and dodging bullets and stuff, it's a lot better to have a proper path of where to go. And it's also a nice incentive to stick around in the levels for longer. There is also the fact that sometimes you will start levels from like the left, sometimes you will start them from the right, which does add to the replayability, but I have no idea of what the criteria for that is. Maybe it's just random. Again, an added little element of complexity, which I appreciate. And of course, the nicest thing that you've probably been seeing this whole time on screen is these pseudo loading screens with tips at the top between levels. I will say it's kind of annoying that you cannot skip them in any way. Maybe they are actual loading screens and that's why you need to wait while the level is loading. I don't know. Regardless, they look really nice. I like how there is unique animations depending on how close you are to escaping the level before the bomb explodes, and other such nice details. Overall, really enjoyed Cloak and Dagger. If you're buying the Atari 50 collection, I suggest very highly to play that one, because it's not a game that I really hear talked about very often, and you know, I just wanted to give it its flowers, I suppose. The last game I have played is not as good. In fact, I would argue it's not good at all. It's called The Tower of Mystery. This is a cancelled Atari 2600 game that was republished. You know, it was half finished and they finished it recently, and it was bundled with this collection. They are like upfront about the fact that this was edited with a lot of modern game development techniques in mind, unlike Aquaventure, which I refuse to believe is an actual game that was supposed to come out in the 80s, but that's a topic for another video, or if you just want to read my review about it on Backlogged. Either way, yes, this game is not good at all, I'm afraid, and that's a bit of a shame because I love me some super early RPGs that make the best out of little technical capabilities like in the Atari 2600. And the big issue about this game is just that, like, what's the point? What's the point of anything that you are doing? You are going through these randomized rooms, picking up objects, walking down the stairs just to see what's next. But I've played it like a couple hours. There is nothing to it. This is a game about nothing, would be a good way to put it. Sometimes you will find a room and you can open it and there is a princess that will carry you onto the next tower. Sometimes you just walk up the stairs and enter a room and you die and you have to start all over again. And then there is the enemies, and the enemies like are completely useless because you can just walk past them easily. Like, they don't chase you, they don't do anything, and when you fight them you just have to hit them once. And if you don't have a weapon with you, you can just give them something, and you will always have at least a couple of objects in your inventory. So, like, it's nothing. It's nothing. There is no challenge whatsoever, and sometimes you will come across these electrified walls that you can't get past, or maybe you can, but only if you have a specific object, except the specific object may not have spawned in the floor that you are in, so what the fuck are you gonna do about it? Really, really badly designed game. If there was a bit more care and consideration put into the game design, just using the elements that are here, you could have made something really cool. I wouldn't even know if to consider this one a homebrew or just like a restored, scrapped project or something like that, but if this was any good, it could have gained a decent audience in the like Atari community, just for the novelty of its history. But as of right now, it's just a really bad game. I hate to end this video on a sour note, but these are like the games that I wanted to talk about right now. I've played other stuff, but like nothing worth spending even just a couple minutes talking about. I will keep playing Atari 50 stuff, so maybe there will be another video in the future. I don't know. I mean, I had fun like rambling for as long as I did, so I don't know. Wishlist Trauma Pets on Steam, why don't you?